welcome to another episode of Check It Out, Carnegie-Stout Library's Adult Services podcast. The biggest news that we have is that we are now open. Our library is now open to the public on a limited basis. Our current hours are Monday through Friday from noon to 7, Saturday from 10 until 2, and Sunday from 1 to 5. We are also continuing to offer curbside service from 10 to noon every day and from 5 to 7 Monday through Friday. Capacity at our building is currently limited, so we ask that you please spend 30 minutes or less per visit to help accommodate these limits and prevent wait times. While you are not able to stay and relax at the library right now, you can browse and check out materials, print, copy, or fax, utilize our reference and genealogy service, and use the computers on a limited basis. Computers will need to be reserved in advance, so you can either call 563-589-4225 to make a reservation, or you can visit the front desk to reserve a time slot. Also in this week's episode is information about our summer reading program for teens, kids, and adults. Librarian Sarah will talk about our book collection since June is National Audiobook Month. We also have Librarian Mike interviewing author William Kent Krueger, and then our friend Becky over at the University of Dubuque will give us some reading recommendations. So besides being open to the public again, we have also started our summer reading program. This program is available for kids, teens, and adults. In the Youth Services Department, the program is going to run from June 8th to August 7th. You will be able to register online and print your logs off starting back on June 8th. The Youth Services Department offers an early literacy program for ages 0 to 3, a kids program for ages 4 to 12, and a teen program for ages 12 to 18. Each program will include 3 prize levels with the chance to be entered into a grand prize drawing where the winner gets to choose their prize from a list of options. The final level of each program will include a free book, and the final level for the teen program includes an invitation to an after-hours teen pizza party that will have a bunch more prize drawings. People can collect their prizes as they complete each level, or you can come collect all of your prizes at once. There will also be a variety of virtual programming opportunities throughout the summer. In addition to the reading program in the Youth Services Department, we also have an adult summer reading program. This program began on Monday, June 8th. We encourage online registration, but in-person registration is available at the recommendations desk during our opening hours. You must be 18 years of age or older with an active library card to sign up for our adult summer reading program. The first 250 people who register will receive a special laser-cut bookmark from the Makerspace. Due to COVID-19 concerns and limited library services and hours, the bookmarks will be given out at a later date towards the end of the program. When you register, plan to pick a mythical creature to represent your reading journey, a winged unicorn or a griffin. These two will race to see who can read more books by the end of the program. Each reading log you submit will help move your selected creature forward in the race. Let the summer reading begin.
June is National Audiobook Month, so I thought I'd highlight a few newer additions to Carnegie-Stout's audiobook collection. The list includes fiction and nonfiction, mysteries, and romance. This list also highlights titles that honor the lived experiences of Black individuals, and for Pride Month, titles that explore and celebrate the LGBTQ experience. Deacon King Kong, written by James McBride and narrated by Dominic Hoffman. National Book Award-winning writer McBride's latest novel is a thoughtful work of historical fiction that uses dark humor to explore complex topics. In 1969, a Brooklyn neighborhood is both shaken and drawn together after a drunken church deacon shoots a young drug dealer. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, written by Talia Hibbert and narrated by Adjoa Ando. This is the first book in British author Hibbert's new romance series, and it's packed with banter and it's more than a little steamy. A near-death experience inspires Chloe to change her life. She is not willing to let illness, racism, or disability stop her from achieving her goals, even if it means working with the frustratingly handsome and artistic superintendent in her new apartment building. Heaven My Home, written by Attica Locke and narrated by J.D. Jackson. This is the second book in Locke's Highway 59 mystery series featuring African-American Texas Ranger Darren Matthews, and readers should read the first book in this series, Bluebird Bluebird, before picking up this sequel. Without spoiling either complex and atmospheric book, Heaven My Home has Matthews searching for a missing child whose family is involved with the Aryan Brotherhood. Hollywood Homicide, written by Kelly Garrett and narrated by Bonnie Turpin. Garrett started her writing career with the television series Cold Case, and both her experience writing about fictional crime and as a Black professional in Hollywood add depth and charm in this first book in her Detective by Day series. Struggling actress Dana Anderson happens to witness a hit-and-run accident and decides to use her connections and her smarts to try and solve the case and claim the $15,000 reward. How We Fight for Our Lives, written and narrated by Saeed Jones. Jones, an award-winning poet, writes about his experience growing up Black and gay in Texas and his struggle to live his authentic life. This haunting and lyrical memoir has received the Kirkus Prize for Nonfiction, a Stonewall Book Award for Nonfiction, and a Lambda Award for Biography. It's Not All Downhill From Here, written and narrated by Terry McMillan. American Book Award-winning novelist Macmillan's latest novel is a witty and engaging story of aging and friendship, sure to appeal to both longtime fans and new readers. Successful Black executive Laretha plans to celebrate her 68th birthday with her husband when he dies unexpectedly. Laretha finds herself re-examining her life, her priorities, and her relationships. Me and White Supremacy, written and narrated by Layla Saad. Saad began an anti-racism challenge on Instagram, which she expanded into this best-selling guided workbook. Me and White Supremacy is a thought-provoking and impassioned challenge for readers to examine the impacts of their own behaviors. Once Ghosted, Twice Shy, written by Alyssa Cole and narrated by Karen Chilton. If you haven't read the first two books in Cole's Reluctant Royals series, beware of spoilers. This steamy novella focuses on the romantic life of Lakotsi, the sharply dressed and incredibly organized assistant to the crown prince of a fictional African nation. The last time Lakotsi visited New York, she met a woman who broke her heart. When she visits New York again, she finds herself face to face with a second chance at love. I hope this list helps you to find a great new audiobook to enjoy this summer. Happy reading!
William Kent Krueger, hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are things in Dubuque?
They're pretty good, sheltering in place, trying to enjoy the weather as much as possible. May I ask you how you and your community have been affected by George Floyd's death? In your new novel, This Tender Land, really focus on justice, equality, and finding meaning in difficult times. So I was wondering, how have you been thinking about what is going on right now?
Sure, I think in truth, we're seeing nothing new. We're seeing a lot of anger, frustration, the result of broken promises, the result of all kinds of efforts to address the issue of racial inequality in our nation. And we have always done a very poor job of that. And I think we're seeing the result of that. Here in our community, St. Paul, the home that I raised my children in and that now my daughter owns, is about 3 blocks from the epicenter of the rioting and looting that took place a few days ago. She called us on the hour Thursday night to keep us informed about what was happening, expressed to us her fear. There were gunshots, there were strange people running down the streets. She could smell smoke in the air. But within a day or so, when I went down to that area myself, I saw that the neighborhood had gathered to repair the damage, to clean up the debris, coming together to begin the healing process. And I think that's the side of this that the media really doesn't show very well. It shows all of the grim images, but it doesn't show a community, Black, white, Latinx, Hmong, coming together to work to bring their community back to a sense of harmony. That doesn't mean that we've solved any of the problems. It's just that we are coming together once again to try to work on them in a constructive and peaceful manner.
I am hoping for the best for St. Paul and Minneapolis and the whole nation, that out of all of the turbulence that we can make some improvements and things will be better. Reading fiction is one way to cope with what's happening and try to understand, especially this tender land. We were hoping that you'd be able to visit Dubuque this summer and talk about this tender land, but the coronavirus has been happening. How is that situation affecting your writing and your work?
Well, I have to be honest with you. It hasn't had a tremendous impact on me at all. I've always been very disciplined in my approach to writing. I've always gotten out of bed at around 6 o'clock in the morning, gotten myself dressed, and typically have gone to a coffee shop where I spend the first 2 or 3 hours every day writing. I've had to exchange my kitchen counter for the coffee shop, but aside from that, I still get up every day, 7 days a week around 6 o'clock and spend the first 2 or 3 hours writing. And I have found that for whatever reason, this is kind of a fertile time for me. I just completed the revisions to the next book in my Cork O'Connor series. That won't be out until a year from this fall, but it's done. I'm working on a novella, and I'm beginning to draft the next book in the Cork O'Connor series. So I am not personally greatly affected by the coronavirus. We're sheltering in place as everybody else is, but I'm fortunate to be in a house with a woman I dearly love and who's a wonderful companion in all of this. So I continue to feel blessed.
This tender land has a kind of a special connection to Dubuque. It's in many ways a story about the Mississippi River, the upper Mississippi, about a way of living on the river and what the river represents. Could you tell us about the story?
Sure. For those readers not familiar with the book, let me just give you a brief synopsis of this tender land. It's set in the summer of 1932, deep in the Great Depression. It's the story of 4 orphans running from the law because they committed a terrible crime, but for the right reason. They know if they take to the roads to get away, they'll be caught quickly because a huge manhunt has been launched to capture them. They're afraid to ride the rails, as everybody was doing back in the Depression, because the railroads back then were patrolled by private cops called bulls. And the bulls had a reputation for being incredibly cruel. So the kids are afraid to ride the rails. Instead, they decide to take to the rivers. They canoe a river called the Gilead to the Minnesota. They canoe the Minnesota to the Mississippi. And their plan is to canoe all the way down the Mississippi River to St. Louis, where they believe they have family and they'll be safe. I've always wanted to write an updated version of Huckleberry Finn, Mike. This is my Huckleberry Finn. And the rivers certainly do play an important part in the story. I think rivers could be metaphors for so many things. And in this story, it's a metaphor for the coming of age. It's the metaphor for the spiritual journey. It's a metaphor for the currents that carry us through life in directions that we might never have imagined. I loved the river images in this tender land. I played with them a lot.
I'm not sure if you remember this or not, but Odie, the main character, he even stops for breakfast at a diner in Dubuque.
Of course I remember that scene. And Odie has a wonderful experience in Duluth. He's treated with great kindness there. I enjoy Dubuque. I think it's such a lovely river city. I've been there several times, spent time there several times, ridden the vernacular. I just enjoy it. It's a beautiful town. Beautiful river town.
I was looking, I started at the library in 2005, and I seem to remember your visit, so I did a little research. You came to Dubuque in January 2008 as a part of the Minnesota crime wave with mystery writers Ellen Hart and Carl Brookins, and your nickname was Iceman. I think it said that you were also in costume.
Yeah. So the Minnesota crime wave existed for a dozen years, and there were 3 of us, all Minnesota mystery writers, who traveled together to promote our work, and we just had a ball. We did an enormous number of library events across the country, and we always dressed in costumes. Carl Brookins was dressed as a gangster, Ellen Hart dressed as a gun moll, and I was always in a convict outfit, the Iceman. So we visited Dubuque and did our shtick there and just had a wonderful time. I remember that well.
Well, you must have a lot of experience with it, but I thought you were pretty brave to drive from Minnesota to Dubuque in January.
It was worth it, as I recall.
Many of your fans in Dubuque follow Cork O'Connor and that series in northern Minnesota, but This Tender Land and the earlier Ordinary Grace from 2013 take your writing in a new direction. How did that develop, and are you thinking about a third novel, a kind of trilogy?
Well, the answer is yes. I have the seed for a third novel in a similar vein, just beginning to take shape in my thinking. But it's going to be a long time before I really have that story together and actually begin writing it. I still have one more book under contract in the Cork O'Connor series before I'm able to launch into that next project.
This Tender Land, the hardcover came out last fall, and the paperback was released on May 26th. And I wanted to let people know that Carnegie-Stout Public Library, we have these in regular and large print and CD audio and also ebook formats. And I believe if people are interested in purchasing copies, our independent bookstore, River Lights, would be able to help with that. We very much hope you will be able to come back to Dubuque soon when things get a little bit better. And thank you very much for talking with us today.
Mike, when we know what the new normal is, shoot me an invitation and we'll see what we can do. I would love to visit.
I'll do that.
All right. You take care, guys.
You too. Thank you.
Hi, this is Becky Canovan, Assistant Director for Public Services up at the Charles C. Myers Library at the University of Dubuque. So I was asked what I'm reading right now, and I don't know if this has been true for a lot of other people, but I have had a really hard time digging into new books. I'm a really emotional reader. I get really invested, and I'm just kind of emotionally drained right now. So I have found a lot of solace in rereading books and characters I already know and love and reconnecting kind of with those characters. And so I am a huge young adult reader, and I'm a huge science fiction and fantasy reader. And so I have been digging back into a collection of books by Leigh Bardugo, who has written the Shadow and Bone trilogy, so 3 books on that one, which she followed up with the Six of Crows duology, so a pair of books. And then she's starting a new duology, the first of which is called King of Scars, and that's called the Nikolai duology. And they're all set in the same world. So that's the one thing I really like. I don't have to relearn a world. And there are a lot of characters that kind of cross over between the books, which I also really appreciate. It is kind of an epic fantasy. So it's that sort of big good versus evil, that sort of stuff. And in this fantasy world, it's set, I feel like, unlike a lot of other fantasies I've read, kind of in an Eastern culture. So it feels very Russian, Eastern European, that kind of Slavic area. It feels like that, and a lot of the language kind of comes across that way, which I think is really fun. I think, growing up in the United States, I've read a lot of British stuff and a lot of very Western European kind of based things. So this was kind of a fun change. Also, I just appreciate, I think a lot of fantasy books that I've read just don't appreciate the seasons. And this book talks about trudging through the snow. And I grew up in the Midwest, so I get snow and cold. That is something I understand, and I thought was kind of fun. So this world follows kind of that idea of multiple nation states in a world, all with very, different cultures and different backgrounds. And there is a group of people who have particular powers, and those people are called the Grisha. And so in these worlds, those Grisha can do things like being a heart render, which is somebody who can control another person's physical body so they can lower their heart rate. And again, those can be used for healing purposes or as a soldier and as a weapon. Or the tide bringers or tide makers, which they, deal with waterways and dealing with the ability to aid boats and trade and those sorts of things. So it's really interesting kind of thing. It's sort of the things that you sort of see if you like Avatar the Last Airbender. It's kind of that feel, but in a book. And the first trilogy is kind of the big epic war story. And then in this duology, this pair of books, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, she takes the same world and some of the characters in that setting and turns it into the biggest heist kind of book. It's absolutely Ocean's 11-esque feel to it. So it turns this, fantasy into this epic heist, and it's so much fun. The characters are really great. It's super diverse. It's just a really well-developed story, and they're told from multiple perspectives, which I think can be off-putting to some people, but I think it's really well done in this story. She does a really great job of giving enough of each character's backstory so that you understand their motivation. Why are they here? Why are they doing what they're doing? And I'm a huge audiobook fan, so I've read all of these books in print, but I also have borrowed them from both the public library, from Carnegie-Stout, and I also own some of the audio. The audio is absolutely fantastic. They are so beautifully done. So if you're looking for a new fantasy series, like, there are 6 books and counting in the series, so it'll last you a little while. And also there's actually a Netflix series in the works. So I don't know where that's at, and I don't know how delayed that's going to be, but they have already cast and started filming, as far as I know, a series that's going to combine the first kind of 5 books, so both the trilogy and that first duology. So we're going to see, they kind of happen about at the same time, so those characters are going to kind of come in and out together, which I think is really fun. So that's what I'm reading right now. I hope you guys enjoy it.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of Check It Out, Carnegie-Stout Library's Adult Services Podcast. Thank you to librarians Sarah and Mike for contributing to this week's episode. A huge thank you to William Kent Krueger for agreeing to be interviewed for our podcast, and thanks to Becky for her book recommendations. Last but not least, a thank you to Ben Eagle for performing and recording the music for our podcast. Remember to join us next time for Check It Out.